James Harrison stood at the edge of his wheat field, watching the strange lights dance across the pre-dawn Nebraska sky. 25 years in the Marine Corps had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, every fiber of his being screamed that something was wrong. The lights moved unlike any aircraft he'd ever encountered, and he'd seen plenty during his time commanding special operations in hot zones across the globe. A flash of purple lightning split the sky, followed by a sound like thunder being run through a broken synthesizer. James tracked the trajectory of a falling object that carved through the clouds, trailing iridescent smoke before disappearing behind his eastern tree line. The impact shook the ground beneath his feet. He considered calling the authorities but thought better of it. Whatever had just crashed on his land, it would be better to assess the situation first. He grabbed his first aid kit and flashlight from the garage, more out of habit than any real expectation he'd need them. The crash site was easy enough to find. A shallow trench carved through his wheat field led to a smoking crater about 20 feet wide. The object that had made it was unlike anything James had ever seen, a teardrop-shaped pod of some silvery material that seemed to shift colors in his flashlight beam. A panel on the pod's surface suddenly dissolved, revealing a humanoid figure slumped inside. The being was tall and slender, with silvery blue skin that seemed to shimmer with bioluminescent patterns. It wore what appeared to be some kind of environmental suit, now damaged and sparking. James approached cautiously, hands raised to show he meant no harm. The alien's eyes opened, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, and focused on him with startling intelligence. It spoke, its voice a melodious series of clicks and whistles that somehow resolved themselves into English in James's mind. "Please help, the consortium must not find me." The alien, who later introduced himself as Zeichel, was a researcher from something called the Galactic Scientific Coalition. He had been studying Earth's unique biological diversity when his ship was attacked by forces belonging to the consortium, a powerful corporate alliance that saw Earth's isolation as profitable. As James helped treat Zeichel's injuries using the alien's own medical technology, he learned that Earth sat at a crucial junction point between several alien civilizations. The consortium had been secretly manipulating events to keep Earth isolated, preventing it from joining the larger galactic community where it might disrupt their trading monopolies. "Your world is unique," Zeichel explained as James wrapped a strange, gel-like bandage around the alien's injured arm. "Your species developed space flight capabilities far earlier than most, yet you remain confined to your solar system. This is not natural. The consortium has been subtly interfering, suppressing certain discoveries, creating doubt and fear around space exploration." James thought about the sudden cancellation of promising space programs over the years, the strange resistance to new propulsion technologies, the way public interest in space exploration seemed to wax and wane without clear reason. "How long have they been doing this?" "Since your first radio signals reached space. They saw potential in humanity, potential they wished to control rather than nurture." Before James could respond, a high-pitched whine filled the air. 3 black ships, shaped like arrowheads, descended from the clouds. They moved with impossible precision, taking up positions around the crash site. "Consortium enforcement vessels," Zeichel whispered, his bioluminescent patterns dulling with fear. "They will not just kill me, they will erase all evidence of contact with your world, including you." James stood up slowly, positioning himself between the ships and his alien guest. 25 years of military service had taught him many things, but the most important lesson was this: sometimes the right thing to do was also the craziest. "Well," he said, helping Zeichel to his feet, "they're about to learn something about humans that your research probably didn't cover." He smiled grimly. "We don't take kindly to bullies no matter what planet they're from." The black ships opened fire, and Earth's first official contact with alien life began not with handshakes and treaties, but with a retired Marine defending an alien scientist in a Nebraska wheat field. It wasn't the first contact scenario anyone had imagined, but it would prove to be exactly the kind humanity needed, a moment where compassion and courage would set the stage for everything that followed. The black ship's energy weapons carved glowing trenches through James's wheat field, but they weren't aiming to kill, at least not yet. They were hurting them, trying to push James and Zeichel away from the crashed pod and its valuable data core. James had fought enough urban battles to recognize containment tactics when he saw them. He kept Zeichel close as they moved through the smoke, using the burning wheat as cover. The alien researcher might be brilliant, but he moved like someone who'd spent more time in laboratories than combat zones. "Your agricultural storage facility," Zeichel said between labored breaths, pointing at James's barn. "Does it have a subterranean level?" "My root cellar, yeah, but—" "Perfect. The mineral content of your soil will help mask our biosignatures." They reached the barn just as dawn began painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. James helped Zeichel down into the root cellar, trying not to think about how surreal it was to be hiding an alien among his preserved vegetables and canned tomatoes. "We need to contact your planetary defense forces," Zeichel said, pulling what looked like a silver marble from a compartment in his suit. James couldn't help but laugh. "We don't have those. Best we've got is the military, and I'm not sure calling them would help our situation." The alien's three eyes blinked in sequence. "But surely your world has protocols for extraterrestrial contact." "Mostly just movies about blowing them up." Before Zeichel could respond, a new sound cut through the morning air helicopter rotors. James climbed the cellar steps and peered through a crack in the barn door. 3 black military helicopters were approaching from the east, while the alien ships hung motionless above his burning field. "Looks like somebody noticed our little light show," James muttered. The helicopters landed in the adjacent field, and James's heart sank as he recognized the unmarked vehicles that began rolling up his driveway. Black SUVs with government plates, never a good sign in his experience. A woman in a dark suit stepped out of the lead vehicle. She surveyed the scene with clinical detachment, then raised a megaphone. "This is Director Alina Walsh, Department of Special Affairs. We have this area surrounded. Come out with your hands up." James looked down at Zeichel, who was studying the silver marble he'd produced earlier. The object had expanded into a holographic display showing what looked like a tactical readout. "More consortium ships are entering your atmosphere," the alien said grimly. "They're establishing a quarantine grid. Once it's complete, they'll begin systematic memory suppression of everyone in the affected area." Memory suppression. The consortium has developed ways to selectively erase memories related to extraterrestrial contact. They've been using it on your world for decades. Why do you think there are so many inconsistent accounts of UFO sightings? James thought about all the conspiracy theories, all the people dismissed as crazy for claiming they'd seen something in the sky. How many times have they done this? Hundreds, perhaps thousands, but this time is different. Zeichel's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with determination. "Because this time we have proof." The alien held up a small crystal that seemed to capture and refract light in impossible ways. "This contains documented evidence of every consortium intervention on Earth for the past 50 years. Every suppressed technology, every erased contact, every manipulated event. If we can get this to the right people." "You have 30 seconds to surrender," Director Walsh's voice boomed from outside. "After that, we will be forced to take action." James peered out again. The government agents were taking up positions around his farm, while the alien ships maintained their ominous hover. He'd seen enough standoffs to know this one could only end in disaster, unless someone did something unexpected. He turned to Zeichel. "I've got an idea, but you'll have to trust me. How good are you at playing dead?" The alien's patterns shifted to what James had learned was amusement. "My species actually evolved from organisms that used defensive catalepsy. We are, as you might say, excellent at playing dead." "Perfect, and that marble thing of yours, can it send messages to other ships? Friendly ones?" "The Galactic Scientific Coalition has vessels in the outer solar system, but the consortium's quarantine grid will prevent any signals from reaching them." James smiled. "Maybe from up there, but I bet they haven't thought about down here." He pulled out his phone and pulled up a contact he'd hoped never to need, his old special operations team. Time to call in some favors. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. James helped Zeichel arrange himself in a convincing, dead alien pose, then covered him with an old tarp. He erased the alien's tactical display and pocketed the crystal containing the evidence. Finally, he grabbed a shotgun from his gun safe, not to use, but as a prop in the performance he was about to give. When he stepped out of the barn with his hands up, shotgun held conspicuously in one hand, Director Walsh's agents immediately trained their weapons on him. "My name is James Harrison, former Marine Corps Special Operations," he called out, "and I just killed an alien in my barn." The declaration sent a ripple of tension through both the human and alien forces. The consortium ships edged closer, their weapons charging. "I've got it covered in there," James continued, loud enough for everyone to hear. "But if anybody comes close, if anybody tries to erase my memory or cover this up, the photos and videos I took are going to hit every social media platform and news outlet simultaneously. My old team is standing by to make it happen." It was a bluff, but one based on enough truth to be credible. He did still have contacts who owed him favors, people who could make information go viral before it could be contained. Director Walsh lowered her megaphone, studying him with narrow eyes. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Mr. Harrison." "Actually," he said, thinking of the crystal in his pocket and the very much alive alien in his barn, "I think I'm the only one here who does." The standoff had begun, and with it, the next phase of humanity's unwitting war for its own destiny. Above them, more black ships entered the atmosphere, their arrival heralding a silent invasion that had been going on far longer than anyone suspected. But this time, humanity had something it had never had before in its long history of being manipulated and contained: proof. The next 48 hours became a dangerous dance of deception. Director Walsh had established a quarantine zone around James's farm, officially declared a chemical spill to keep civilians away. The consortium ships maintained their presence high in the atmosphere, disguised from civilian radar by technology far beyond human understanding. And in the middle of it all, James Harrison found himself running the most important covert operation of his life. His old team hadn't disappointed. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, now working in cybersecurity, had helped establish secure communications. Captain Diana Wells, who'd left the Marines for NASA, provided crucial insight into which officials might be compromised by consortium influence. And Chief Technical Sergeant Raj Patel, whose retirement had really been a cover for his work with a secret think tank, helped them understand the technological implications of what they were dealing with. In James's basement, Zeichel worked tirelessly to decode the crystal's contents while explaining the true scope of the situation. "The consortium isn't just a corporate entity," he said, his patterns glowing with intensity. "They're an organization that profits from controlling the development of pre-interstellar civilizations. Earth is just one of dozens of worlds they've manipulated." James watched as holographic displays showed numerous worlds, each with their own stories of suppressed development. But why? What's the profit in keeping civilizations isolated? Resources, control, power. Zeichel's patterns dimmed. An isolated civilization can be exploited without oversight. Their resources can be harvested, their development guided toward profitable channels. The consortium has been secretly trading with certain Earth corporations for decades, exchanging limited technology for resources and influence. Diana's voice crackled over their secure channel. "That explains some of the anomalies I've seen at NASA. Projects suddenly losing funding, promising technologies mysteriously hitting dead ends." "Exactly," Zeichel confirmed. "The consortium ensures Earth develops exactly as fast as they want, no faster, no slower." But even as they worked to compile and understand the evidence, their enemies weren't idle. Director Walsh's agents had begun interviewing James's neighbors, subtly altering their memories of the crash. The consortium ships had established a full quarantine grid, preventing any unauthorized vessels from approaching Earth. What neither group expected was the underground network that began forming around James's farm. Local farmers, hearing about the chemical spill, remembered James from his community service work. They began watching the government agents, reporting their movements through seemingly innocent conversations at the local diner. Marcus had discovered something even more interesting: patterns in global internet traffic that suggested other resistance groups already existed. "Look at these data clusters," he said during one of their secure calls. "There are people all over the world who have figured out pieces of this puzzle. They just haven't been able to connect the dots." Raj's analysis of the crystal's technical data revealed something even more startling. "The consortium's memory suppression technology isn't perfect," he explained. "It leaves traces, patterns in brain activity that could be detected with the right equipment. And get this, some humans seem naturally resistant to it. That's why they've had to work so hard to discredit UFO witnesses," Diana realized. "Some people actually remember." The breakthrough came on the third night. Zeichel managed to decrypt a section of the crystal that detailed the consortium's Earth operations. The list of compromised officials and corporations was staggering, and it included several members of Director Walsh's own department. But not Walsh herself, James noted, studying the data. She's not on any of these lists. Which means she's either so highly placed we don't have her data, Raj suggested, or she's as much in the dark as most of humanity, James finished. She's just following orders, thinking she's protecting Earth from alien contact. The revelation gave James an idea. Using skills honed through years of covert ops, he managed to make contact with Walsh without either her agents or the consortium knowing. Their midnight meeting in his cornfield would later be remembered as the moment the tide began to turn. "I thought I was serving my country," Walsh said after James showed her the evidence. Her normally composed face showed the first cracks of genuine emotion. "They told me we were protecting Earth from hostile alien influence." "In a way you were," James said, "just not the aliens you thought." Walsh's decision to switch sides wasn't just a personal choice. It was a tactical earthquake. She had access to resources and connections that would prove invaluable. More importantly, she knew which other officials might be willing to help once they learned the truth. By the end of the week, their small resistance had grown into a careful network of trusted individuals. Scientists who had encountered unexplainable suppression of their work, military personnel who had witnessed covered-up incidents, and civilians who had resisted memory suppression. Each brought their own pieces of the puzzle. Zeichel continued his analysis of the crystal, but now he had help. A small team of Earth's best scientists, secretly assembled by Diana and Walsh, worked to understand the consortium's technology. Their goal wasn't just to resist, it was to develop countermeasures. "The consortium's greatest weapon has been humanity's ignorance," Zeichel explained during one of their strategy sessions. "They've kept Earth isolated by making you doubt yourselves, making you fear the stars instead of reaching for them." James looked at the unlikely group assembled in his basement: alien scientist, government director, former special ops soldiers, and civilian experts, all united against a threat most of humanity didn't even know existed. "Well," he said, "I'd say that weapon's not going to work much longer." But even as their alliance grew stronger, the enemy was preparing its own countermoves. High above Earth, more consortium ships were arriving, and this time they weren't interested in maintaining their cover. The silent invasion was about to become very loud indeed. The consortium made their move on a quiet Sunday morning. Across the globe, their ships descended from high orbit, dropping their stealth fields for the first time in decades. Panic erupted in major cities as massive black vessels took position over government buildings and military installations. The message was clear: resistance would be futile. But James Harrison and his growing alliance had been preparing for this moment. As the consortium ships appeared, Diana Wells initiated Protocol Sunburst, a series of coordinated information releases that flooded the internet with proof of the consortium's decades-long manipulation of Earth. "Let's see them try to suppress this," Marcus said as he monitored the data streams from their makeshift command center in James's basement. "We're broadcasting on every frequency, every platform. Even if they shut down the internet, enough people will have downloaded the proof." The evidence was irrefutable. Videos of memory suppression operations, documents showing technological suppression, proof of secret trades with corrupt corporations. Most damaging were the records showing how the consortium had deliberately stoked conflicts between nations to keep humanity divided and fearful of unity. Director Walsh's connections proved invaluable. As the consortium ships made their show of force, she was in Washington, meeting with military leaders who had long suspected something was wrong but lacked the proof to act. With Zeichel's data, they finally had what they needed. "The consortium's biggest mistake," Raj explained during an emergency briefing, "was thinking humanity would respond to their show of force with fear. They don't understand what happens when humans get angry." He was right. As the truth spread, the global response wasn't panic, it was rage. Decades of manipulation, of suppressed progress, of being treated like lab rats in a corporate experiment. Humanity's reaction was anything but fearful. Scientists around the world, now free from consortium interference, began sharing their failed research. Projects that had been mysteriously shut down were revived. Diana's NASA contacts revealed propulsion technologies that had been developed in secret, waiting for the right moment. But the consortium wasn't finished. Their ships launched a massive electronic warfare campaign attempting to shut down Earth's communications. What they didn't expect was for humanity to have countermeasures ready. They thought we were primitive, Zeichel said with what James had learned was his species' version of a smile. They didn't realize that by suppressing your official space program, they forced human innovation underground. Your species adapted in ways they never expected. He was right. Citizen scientists had been developing peer-to-peer communication networks for years. Ham radio operators maintained global contact when digital networks were disrupted. The very isolation the consortium had forced on humanity had made Earth's people incredibly resourceful. The turning point came when the consortium attempted to implement widespread memory suppression. They deployed thousands of smaller craft, preparing to blanket major population centers with their technology. But this time, humanity was ready. Raj's team had developed countermeasures based on their study of the crystal's data. Simple devices, easily manufactured and distributed, that could block the memory suppression fields. The designs had been shared globally in the first minutes of the information release. They're used to dealing with controlled populations, James observed as reports came in of consortium craft being driven back by protected cities. They don't know how to handle billions of angry humans who know exactly what's been done to them. The consortium's carefully maintained illusion of overwhelming power began to crack. Their ships were advanced but not invincible. Their technology was impressive but not unbeatable. And their biggest advantage, humanity's ignorance, was gone. In orbit, the first ships of the Galactic Scientific Coalition arrived, breaking through the quarantine grid. They brought with them more evidence of the consortium's crimes, not just against Earth, but against dozens of other developing civilizations. Your resistance has inspired others, Zeichel reported as data streamed in. Other suppressed worlds are rising up. The consortium's entire network of controlled populations is collapsing. But victory wouldn't come without cost. The consortium, realizing their control was slipping, became desperate. Their ships began targeting key infrastructure, trying to force humanity into submission through brute force. James watched from his farm as distant explosions lit up the horizon. "They still don't get it," he said to Walsh, who had returned from Washington. "Every attack just makes people more determined to fight back." Humanity's greatest strength, Walsh agreed, has always been its ability to unite against a common enemy. They spent so long keeping us divided, they forgot what happens when we work together. The battle for Earth had entered its final phase. Around the world, people who had been strangers days ago worked together to resist an enemy that had manipulated them for generations. Scientists shared discoveries, governments shared resources, and ordinary citizens showed extraordinary courage. In James's basement command center, the unlikely alliance of humans and their alien allies coordinated the global resistance. The next 24 hours would determine not just Earth's fate, but the future of dozens of suppressed civilizations across the galaxy. As night fell over the Nebraska fields where it had all begun, James Harrison loaded fresh batteries into their communication equipment and prepared for what everyone knew would be the consortium's desperate final assault. "You know," he said to Zeichel, "when I retired to become a farmer, I thought I was done fighting wars." The aliens' patterns pulsed with what James now recognized as determination. "Perhaps you were meant to fight one last battle not just for Earth, but for every world the consortium has enslaved." Above them, the night sky filled with the lights of approaching ships. The final confrontation was about to begin. The final battle for Earth began at dawn. The consortium launched a massive assault, their ships darkening skies across the globe. But humanity wasn't fighting alone anymore. The Galactic Scientific Coalition's vessels engaged the consortium fleet in orbit, while on the ground, Earth's united forces put their hastily prepared defenses to the test. James's farm had become an impromptu command center for the North American resistance. Radar screens showed hundreds of consortium ships attempting to break through the coalition defense grid, but something was different about their attack pattern. "They're desperate," Zeichel observed, studying the tactical displays. "Their formation lacks coherence. They're not fighting to win anymore, they're fighting to survive." Director Walsh's voice crackled over the secure channel. We're getting similar reports globally. The consortium's corporate leadership is fracturing. Some of their ships are already retreating. The reason became clear as Marcus decoded intercepted consortium communications. Their carefully built empire of controlled worlds was collapsing. Inspired by Earth's resistance, other suppressed civilizations were rising up. The consortium's resources were stretched thin, trying to maintain control across dozens of star systems. They never planned for this, Raj said, analyzing the data. Their whole strategy relied on keeping civilizations isolated, unaware of each other. Now that the truth is out, their control is breaking down everywhere. But a cornered enemy is often the most dangerous. The consortium launched their final gambit, a massive electromagnetic pulse designed to disable Earth's technology, followed by a planned deployment of their most powerful memory suppression field. They're trying to reset everything, Diana warned from her position at NASA. If they succeed, they'll erase the last week from everyone's minds. We'll lose all the progress we've made. James looked at Zeichel, seeing the same determination in the aliens' bioluminescent patterns that he felt. Then we don't let them succeed. What followed would later be called the Silent Dawn. Though the battle raged across Earth's skis, much of the crucial fighting happened in the invisible realm of electronic warfare. Marcus and his global network of hackers worked to counter the consortium's cyber attacks. Raj's team deployed their countermeasures against the memory suppression technology. And most importantly, ordinary people refused to back down. The consortium had made a fatal miscalculation. They thought destroying Earth's technology would leave humanity helpless. Instead, it revealed just how resilient humans could be. Communities organized without digital communications. Ancient warning systems, bells, horns, signal fires were revived. Humanity adapted just as it always had. The turning point came when Diana's NASA team, working with Galactic Scientific Coalition engineers, managed to hack into the consortium's command and control network. Years of studying suppressed technology had given Earth scientists insights that the consortium never expected them to have. "We're in their systems," Diana reported triumphantly, broadcasting their private communications to every ship in their fleet. The effect was devastating. Consortium crew members, many of whom had been told they were protecting developing worlds from harmful contact, learned the truth about their organization's exploitation. Ships began standing down. Some even turned their weapons on their own command vessels. James watched from his farmhouse porch as the massive black ships that had loomed over Earth for days began retreating. Beside him, Zeichel's patterns pulsed with what could only be described as joy. "Your species," the alien said, "has done something unprecedented. You've not only broken free of the consortium's control, you've helped free countless other worlds as well." The aftermath of what would become known as the Liberation War brought changes no one could have predicted. Earth's isolation was over, but humanity approached galactic society on its own terms. The knowledge and technology that had been suppressed for generations was finally unleashed, leading to a renaissance of innovation and discovery. The consortium's former holdings were transformed into a new alliance of free worlds, with Earth playing a crucial role. James's farm, where it all began, became the site of the first official Earth-based Galactic Diplomatic Center, though he insisted on keeping part of it as working farmland. "Keeps us grounded," he would explain to visiting alien diplomats. "Reminds us where we came from." 1 year after the Silent Dawn, James stood in his wheat field with Zeichel, watching ships from a dozen alien worlds pass peacefully overhead. They were no longer black shapes of menace, but bright vessels of cooperation and trade. "You know what the consortium never understood about humans," James said, running his hand through the golden wheat. "We're not afraid of differences. We don't fear the unknown. What we can't stand is being controlled, being told we're not ready for the truth." Zeichel's patterns shifted in agreement. They saw your isolation as a weakness to exploit. Instead, it became the forge that strengthened you. Every suppressed technology forced you to find another way. Every hidden truth made you look harder for answers. Director Walsh, now Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, joined them in the field. "The latest reports show the last consortium holdouts have surrendered. Their empire of secrets is officially over." James nodded, looking up at the stars that no longer seemed so distant. "And something better is taking its place. Not an empire of control, but a bridge between stars. a connection between worlds that choose to work together. As night fell over the Nebraska fields, lights from a dozen alien cities twinkled on the horizon, their glow mixing with the starlight above. Earth had found its place in the galaxy, not as a controlled population or a suppressed civilization, but as a free world that had helped forge a new path among the stars. The simple act of kindness, a farmer helping a wounded alien, had sparked a revolution that transformed not just one world, but an entire galaxy. It was proof that sometimes the greatest changes begin not with grand plans or mighty armies, but with a single choice to do what's right, no matter the consequences.